You ever just go on like autopilot for a couple of months, blink, and notice how much time you've lost? Because since the recording of last episode and this episode, it is ridiculous how 2 months or 2.5 months or however long has gone by without it even feeling that way. I'm just so in the zone of like being indoors all the damn time, you get me? That I just don't feel it anymore. Like, this is life now. This is where I'm at. I'm at the part of quarantine. I'm in the phase of like doing everything that you can health wise. So I'm working out. I'm in that working out phase. I'm eating as good as I possibly can. And I feel a lot better, if I'm gonna be honest. Like, I even started taking vitamins. I know that sounds like dumb. Hey, take your gummies. But the gummies definitely help. I've been in a better mood. So I decided to start this up again. After recording last episode, I didn't think I was going to continue forward with it, which is kind of dumb in hindsight, because after listening to that last episode, after actually releasing it the other day, I feel so much better, and the episode is way better than I was expecting to, like, listening to it. So let's just go with it, you get me? Like, I feel like we finally hit the stride in what a podcast should be, or at least what I feel this show is. And yeah, I'm happy about it. Like I said, I'm feeling healthy, and hopefully this whole upswing is a momentum I keep up on. But let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome, everybody, to the Punched Podcast, where yours truly has a lot to say about nothing. Like just now, like that whole opening. I'm going to be talking a lot about the UFC, since it's been a couple months and 2 UFCs have passed us by. I don't really get to talk about 249 at all. 250 and then 251 just happened like the other day. It's going to be really hard to just come back to my thoughts at the end like I normally do, because I usually end with sports stuff, but I'm just going to go ahead and do as much rapid fire as I can so you can get into video game junk. But yeah, so 249 was the retirement of Henry Cejudo after beating Dominic Cruz, after knocking him out crazy style. I know that there is a little bit of a scandal. I don't even know if a scandal is the right word for it, but like, for the lack of better vocabulary, there's this whole scrutiny behind it because Dominic Cruz felt like he was still getting back up. Dominic Cruz didn't feel like he was knocked out. But if you go back and see, Henry Cejudo not only knees him in the face, but gets at least a good 10 punches right directly into his face. So it was only a matter of a few more punches before whoever the ref was, to stop it. And I guess I should go on this tangent right now, but what's the deal with the comfort of a good ref? Like, whenever you see, Herb Dean or what's-his-face Gordon or Big John McCarthy, it feels good. It's like, you're in good hands. You know that there's not going to be iffy calls, and you know for a fact that they're going to let you do your business. And I guess I really shouldn't be talking like I fight in the UFC, because I don't fight at all, barely, I mean? I get a couple of months of workouts and I start feeling like I'm a top-tier athlete. But no, what I mean is, like, being a viewer and watching these dudes, duke it out and settle their business. It's always good to know that there won't be any mishaps on the ref side. And the reason I bring this up, man, it's going to be hard to talk about past UFCs, because in 251, like here, that during this last weekend, there was this specific fight with Jose Aldo, who fought to the very bitter flippin' end, who did his very best against this up-and-coming, ridiculously strong, really fast is what it seems like, Russian dude. His name's like Peter Yan. That guy just completely smashed Jose Aldo. And it was hard to watch because Jose Aldo's like the former champ in the bantamweight. Excuse me, not the bantamweight. He just fought in bantamweight and lost. He used to be the featherweight champion. So the amount of respect that myself and like literally the whole MMA world has for Aldo, you would hope that something like this last weekend wouldn't happen. And what would happen was like there was just way too many shots landed on him at certain points when it comes to fighting. There's like certain body language as a ref that you should be able to read. In this specific case, the ref just like let way too many way too many shots land after Aldo essentially just covered up his arms. He was knocked down by a punch that wasn't even that hard, or wasn't harder than any of the stuff that was thrown at him throughout the previous 4 rounds, because this happened in the 5th round, the last round of their fight, and there wasn't really much defense going on. He covered up his head and allowed a bunch of shots to get landed on him, and I just don't know what the ref was thinking. I don't know what the ref was doing, like whether or not he was caught up in the awe of this happening to a former champion, but it definitely should not have gone on as long as it did. I actually felt bad after the fight too, because Jose Aldo like tweeted, I'm sorry for my performance or something along those lines. He's essentially was apologizing for losing, but like that dude moving down a weight class, being the former champ for as long as he was, I mean during his reign or something, quote unquote reign, he had like maybe 6 or 7 title defenses in a row, and that's no easy feat whatsoever. And that has nothing to do with the actual stoppers. That has nothing to do with the ref. But like, I don't feel that Jose Aldo, this literally walking legend, needs to apologize for his performance. Like, the guy did what he could, and he just got beat by the better guy. The dude is pretty much half his age, and is an up and coming star. You feel like there's really nothing for him to apologize about. But yeah, okay, going back to 249, I know I skipped ahead to 251, but going back to 249 real quick, I just want to say that the Gaethje and Ferguson fight was like out of this world shocking, because it wasn't the matchup that we wanted in Ferguson and Khabib, but it might have ended up being better, because Gaethje pretty much took all of this momentum that Ferguson had going in and showed like, yo, I got these hands. It was like almost brutal having to see Tony Ferguson get rocked the way he did. And hats off, dude. Hats off to Tony Ferguson, because he kept getting like punched in the face, but he kept moving forward. He kept going for it. He was still, swinging for the fences. He was still doing whatever he could. But yo, Gaethje has them hands, dude. I guess that's like pretty much the standout for 249. 250. 250 is the Amanda Nunes fight. She is without a doubt the GOAT when it comes to women, like the greatest of all time when it comes to women. I don't see her fighting Weili Zhang or anything like that. She probably won't fight Valentina Shevchenko either. I think they're too big of a difference in weight class. Regardless, though, she's a beast, and she straight up threw the other woman around. I forget her name, unfortunately, but that's how bad she beat that other chick. She was just like straight up, tossing her around, putting her down on the ground and pounding her. It was phenomenal to watch. It was genuinely a display of athleticism within the sport of MMA that we don't normally get to see. And come to think of it, it's the women who give us these displays of technique that, and I'm not taking away from the men, obviously, but we don't necessarily get to see that level of technicality anymore. Normally it's just dudes who can get the better punches off, who can get, the better beatdowns in. And that does end up happening in women's matches often, but in the style that it's done, it's just so much more technical. It's beautiful to watch, genuinely. Like, that was actually a word used to describe Rose Namajunas this weekend at 251. And I was going to say a little bit more about 250, but let's just say to move on, because I can't not talk about 251. In 250, Sugar Sean O'Malley, that was a dope-ass knockout. He literally just like starched the guy and walked off like a beast, and he'll be fighting again August 15th, so we'll see like how much of this momentum he could carry on. August 15th is going to be a dope-ass card, because we got Miocic, Cormier 3, and this is for sure going to be DC's last fight, so hopefully he wins. Hopefully he goes out on, the hype that he's always had surrounding him. He's in the talks for the greatest of all time, definitely. And getting that win over Miocic will solidify that for sure. Alright, but 251 dudes, holy crap, the amount of drama leading up to this flipping card. So the main event was Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns. And if you've been listening to the podcast, I've actually mentioned Gilbert Burns a couple of times. He's been, on the up and up. He's had a ridiculous run within these last however many months, within this last year, I would even say. So I totally understand why they would give him a title shot with his teammate as well, Kamaru Usman, but he was a replacement for Jorge Masvidal. And Jorge Masvidal initially wanted more money because of the amazing year that he's had. After coming off 3 wins, he knocked out Darren Till. He flicking. I can't even speak. This is how excited I get over George Masvidal. But he kneed Ben Askren in the face to get the fastest KO in UFC history. And then they forced them to stop fighting when he fought Nate Diaz because of how hard he messed him up. So it kind of only makes sense for him to want more money with all the attention that he's drawing to the UFC currently. Unfortunately, they never really got anything together. Like Dana White and his people, they didn't work anything out. They couldn't work anything out, unfortunately. So because they couldn't work anything out, they went to the next person on the list, which was Durinho, which is Gilbert Burns, because he was going to fight for less money. He's just a dude who wants to fight, which in Dana White's eyes is like, awesome, let's capitalize on this. Unfortunately, this guy tests positive for COVID-19 right before his flight to Abu Dhabi. Now, currently they're doing fights on a man-made island in Abu Dhabi so that they can include international fighters like Kamaru Usman. Or is it Usman? I'm pretty sure it's Usman. And any other fighters that aren't, from the United States. So right before he goes on this flight, right before all of the fighters flew to Abu Dhabi, they tested them for COVID-19. And like I said, Gilbert Burns tested positive. With just 6 days' notice, Jorge Masvidal steps in, says, I can take this fight, just give me the money. And they worked something out enough, to satisfy him because he flew out there and fought the champion on 6 days' notice, having to drop 20 pounds. On a stacked card with PVZ, with 3 championship bouts in total, George Masvidal stole the show by just being able to show up like that. And that was just the main event. That was just the main part of the card. Like, the prelims leading up to it were pretty decent. I'm not gonna lie to you. The Yuri knockout, I don't know his last name. It was his debut in the UFC. Dude knocked somebody out that was 7th in the world for the light heavyweights. And now I'm excited as hell to see what he'll do, because he had such an awkward way of moving. And it was a perfectly placed match because it was the prelims leading up to the pay-per-view. So I feel like everybody saw that. So for me, the night started out around 5 p.m. my time, and I was watching every single one of the prelims that are available to me. And I had been watching, fights pretty much all day right before the main card started. So for them to end the prelims with a strong knockout, a strong performance, a fun dude to watch, really got me in the mood for the rest of the night, because right off the bat, PVZ being Paige Van Sant, got armbarred by Amanda Ribas. Or is it Ribas? I don't know how they pronounce it specifically, but I'm just going to say Ribas. Which really sucked for PVZ because this was her last fight on her UFC contract, and very much like George Masvidal, she was like, I want to get paid more. I don't feel like, I'm bringing all of this attention to the UFC and I'm not getting enough, for the amount of publicity that I do on my own, period, because she's huge all over social media. But they gave her the worst possible matchup with this Amanda Ribas. is it Jessica? No, that's Jessica Andrade, the next fight. But this chick just had phenomenal ground game, excuse me. And the match is over within like a minute, not even. It was definitely that first round. It was super impressive to start off that main card. Yo, so this is a post-editing thing. I apologize if the sound is a little bit different, but I just wanted to apologize for not talking about the Rose Namajunas fight. She's a beast. She entered that flow state she talked about. She beat Jessica Andrade crazy style, even though she got rocked pretty hard in that third round. And I just wanted to insert that real quick right here because I got caught up in talking about everybody else's stuff. But Rose looked incredible that night. She really knows how to just flow and throw those hands. She's fun to watch. And like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, her style and her technique is very beautiful to witness. After was that Jose Aldo fight, which again was heartbreaking. Peter Yan is a beast. I will not digress. No, I won't take away and I won't belittle his ability. He took out a former champ. He smashed him literally, and I'm excited to see what happens next. They're saying that Aljamain Sterling is probably his next fight. I would love to see Aljo after him being Aldo. But we'll see where that ends up going. There's no talks genuinely from the UFC. It's all commentators, speculating, oh, who should this person fight next? And after hearing what everybody else has to say, I'm right in line with it. Yeah, I don't think I need to say too much more about the Aldo and Yan fight. I feel like I talked it to death, poor guy. Again, that guy does not need to apologize for anything. The next fight, though, that has a lot of scandaliciousness with it is the Volkanovski and Max Holloway rematch. And just to give you a little, backstory on that, Volkanovski is a guy who's maybe like 5'7" or something, and Max Holloway, let's just round it out, is about 6 foot. Somehow, Volkanovski, this dude from Australia, fighting Max Holloway, the dude from Hawaii, had a 2 reach inch advantage on him. Like, that's how wide this dude's arms are. That's how far he can reach out. And that alone impressed me. I honestly hadn't heard of him until he beat Max Holloway last year. And people were saying with, their last fight, the fight that Holloway lost his title, because Holloway was the champ for that division prior, it was pretty clear that Volkanovski won, predominantly on leg kicks. He just had more strikes overall, so they gave it to him. In this fight, on Fight Island in 251, there's even more certainty. I don't want to say all the T's in there. There's even more uncertainty because it went all 5 rounds again, but the way everyone reacted on Twitter, the way that a lot of the commentators outside of the event were reacting to the fight, everyone gave it to Max Holloway. It was a close fight in the sense that they both were striking each other, and it was a close fight in the sense that they both knocked each other down a couple of times. Volkanovski made some very good adjustments so that he wasn't completely dominated by Max's striking. But in my opinion, I feel like Max Holloway had at least 3 out of those 5 rounds. The first 2 and maybe the 4th one. And you could also argue that he won all first 3 of those rounds and the last 2 went to Volkanovski. But the way the judges scored it went to the current champion. So really what you can do is nothing. I mean, you could scream that it was, a steal, that it was a robbery, because everybody likes Max Holloway. He is a beloved fighter, and I get the reaction, but it also kind of was a very close fight to begin with. And me not being a professional judge in any capacity whatsoever, I've kind of just accepted the fact that there could be so much room for error when it comes to the judging, because if you guys know about fighting in general, there is this other fight with Dominic Reyes and John Jones that everybody says Dominic Reyes won those first 3 rounds, and they still gave it to John Jones for whatever reason. And I'm starting to think that they do that because they're the champion, so they kind of just like lean in their favor. But everyone's saying it has to do with the system itself and not necessarily the judges, because there's like a 10-9 system, and there always has to be someone scoring more points than the other. So like, let's say two dudes duke it out for one round, and they both have a 10 out of 10 points performance, but one just etches out the other one in some way or form, or at least that judge thinks that they did. They have to go 10-9. There's no way that two dudes could go 10-10. But again, I digress. People were not happy with the Max Holloway fight. It was still a slugfest. It was fun to watch. It was way more close than the Jose Aldo and Jan fight. So, I mean, I'll give him that. What's crazy, what I'll end on with the Max Holloway and Volkanovski fight. I keep saying their names, dude. Dana White himself even said to the press after, during the conference, he asked them straight up, like, did anybody have Volkanovski winning? Did anyone have him in favor or whatever it is? So you can definitely tell he was not happy. And I mean, they've said this before. It's like, you really can't leave it up to the judges. Even Max Holloway himself said coming into this fight, he's like, I need to put that away because I can't leave it up to chance. I have to like put him away and make sure that I am the prominent and dominant champion, that I am the winner of this contest without any questions asked whatsoever. I even heard like this really interesting opinion from Daniel Cormier from the DC and Helwani show, is that whenever he likes a specific fighter, he'll score against them. Like, he'll score for the other fighter just so that whoever he's rooting for makes it that clear cut in their win. And when it comes to a fight that is as close as that one was, I get why there is a bunch of uncertainty. I get why people think it's a robbery, and I just get the reaction overall. Before we move into our last fight here, I'm gonna go ahead and take a sip of my coffee and take a breath, because gosh damn, dude, I'm getting way too excited over UFC. Well, anyway, to put it bluntly, the main event was kind of a snooze fest. It was kind of a snooze fest, straight up. Kamaru Usman is an indomitable athlete. He is incredible. He is a superior athlete to George Masvidal in every way, shape, or form, in my opinion, except striking. With George Masvidal coming in on 6 days' notice, with the announcement of him being on the cover of UFC 4 with Israel Adesanya, with him having the year that he had prior coming into this fight, I don't think he was going to lose this weekend. And I do mean lose in the sense of like life and winning like in life, not necessarily, the fights themselves or this fight itself, because he lost. He definitely lost. He got overpowered crazy style by Usman, but Usman had to hold him up against the cage. Like, if you saw the fight with him and Cody Garbrandt, they just exchanged punches throughout the entirety of that match. When it came to George Masvidal and Usman, he tried to exchange with him. He tried to, outbox him, but he couldn't do it. Excuse that motorcycle, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't answer with his own hands, so he did the next best thing he could do and try to take him down. And this was a speculation that everybody pretty much had, because if Kamaru Usman isn't going to answer with his own hands, he's going to answer with his wrestling. And George Masvidal not having a full camp and then having to lose 20 pounds within 6 days, those 6 days that he took this fight on, it was a lot better of a fight than it could not have been. I don't know how else to say that. Like, the fight could have been a lot worse. It could have been over a lot faster as well, but hats off to Masvidal being able to go all 5 rounds with the champ. Hats off to Masvidal for being able to stuff so many takedowns. He had incredible takedown defense. He seemed to be a lot tougher than what Usman was expecting because he had to use his wrestling. But the reason I say it was a snooze fest is because compared to that, Cody... Did I say Cody Garbrandt? I meant Kobe Covington. That Kobe Covington fight was a slugfest through and through, and it was hella exciting, but for whatever the hell reason, it didn't get Usman on the map. Like, he didn't get the recognition that he probably should have. And even with this fight, with all of the momentum that George had coming in, like I said, he wasn't gonna lose this weekend, even if he lost this fight. My point is, even with me saying that it was a snooze fest, I have to give it to the champion give it up to the champion because Usman fought a smart fight. He did what he was supposed to do to win. And again, this is another point that I heard off of another show, but had he stood there and tried to duke it out with George Masvidal in Masvidal's hands, everybody would have been scrutinizing and been like, faulting him for not playing to his strengths. Everybody would have said like, oh, how dumb is Kamaru for doing the stand-up game with George and letting him do all this crap. No, he went out there to win. And with all of the tools in his toolbox, as he calls them, that he pulled out, the only thing he could do really was hold George Masvidal against the cage and, irk out strikes, irk out toe stomps, all that stuff. For as much hype as this fight had going into it, the fight itself wasn't all that great, but it's an interesting playing field now that this is over. Now, George Masvidal's stock could have gone up crazy had he won this, but I still feel like it went up because he took it on such short notice and went all 5 rounds, and forcing the champion to win in the way that he did. But on the flip side of that, like, we can't fault Kamaru Usman for fighting the way he does. He's on like a 15 or 16 fight win streak. People are comparing him to like George St. Pierre, and in all honesty, I don't see anybody giving him trouble. In all of the fights that I've seen him in, there hasn't been too much of a dominant force against him. He's normally the one controlling each fight he's in, and we just have to give it up to his athleticism as fans, despite it not being as flashy as your Nate Diaz's or Conor McGregor's or George Masvidal's, you get me? Like, not everyone's going to have that larger than life personality, and sometimes you get someone who's like, one of those stone cold, like, kind of cool killers in Kamaru Usman. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and digress on UFC talk. I'm excited for the fight night that's coming up on Wednesday. I'm excited for August 15th. There's gonna be nothing but amazing fights from here on out. In fact, this whole year so far has been hype as fuck. Like, I'm super excited to see where the sport goes next year even. But like I said, I'll digress. We have a bunch of other junk to talk about, like the official cancellation of TwitchCon, which I guess that's all you can really say about it. Like, they finally did something. There's the release of the PS5. Well, not necessarily the release, but the reveal of it. I think it looks fairly nice. It has a genuine quote-unquote futuristic design that I definitely got on board with. It's apparently a lot taller than its PS4 counterpart, so we'll see how it fits into everybody's entertainment systems. But currently, like, the games that have been announced that interest me are the Spider-Man Miles Morales game, which was hinted at heavily at the end of the first Spider-Man game. I initially thought we were just going to get sections in Spider-Man 2 in which we got to play as Miles Morales, kind of like what we did with like MJ and the first Spider-Man. But now we're getting a full standalone game of just Miles Morales. I assume it's going to be in the same like open world that we got. I assume it'll be set in the same place, just kind of with like updated graphics for the PS5. I'm hella excited for that. Freaking Miles Morales, dude. A lot of people argue that he's the best Spider-Man, period. I mean, I'm partial. I'm partial to my boy Peter Parker, obviously, but Miles Morales is a beloved character for sure. Gran Turismo 7 is coming out. That was announced. The overall gameplay, well, quote-unquote gameplay, from what we saw in what they showed us, it looks dope. Like, I'm in awe at what the PS5 could potentially do. There's going to be a new Oddworld sequel called Oddworld Soulstorm. I doubt that, many other people know about it. I'm pretty sure that's for like more of the older school gamers, kind of showing my age here. But my brother and I were hella excited for that. Oddworld was one of our first games on the PlayStation 1, and it took us years to actually beat it because it's grueling, it's punishing, It makes you remember a bunch of stuff, and for you being like an 8-year-old child trying to beat that and succeeding, think about the amount of stress that both my brother and I went through. I'm excited to go through it again. I'm ready to go through more stress. They are continuing the Little Big Planet franchise with Sackboy, A Big Adventure. I'm excited as hell for that because the first Little Big Planet was such an impact for me on the PS3 and having fun with my brother and my cousins and anybody who created levels online really made that experience special. So for them to have kind of an adventure for Sackboy as opposed to just exploring a bunch of levels, I'm excited for that. Because come to think of it, I mean, did Little Big Planet have a story? I don't know. I don't remember. What it seems like is that they are focusing on that a little bit more, and I don't know. The young PlayStation gamer in me got super excited. We got our first look at Deathloop, which is the new game from the guys who developed Dishonored and Dishonored 2. I'm going to be honest here, it kind of seems like more of the same in what we've seen in Dishonored, just with a new, coat of paint, with a fresh skin, with a different setting. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because the narrative is wacky and wild. Apparently this guy has to escape this city, and every time he dies, he comes back to life. There's all these crazy, weird people, or lunatics, or whatever they are, trying to capture you, trying to get at you, as well as another player coming to kill you. So you get like this really cool, almost spy feeling, like 80s propaganda-ish aesthetic. I really don't know how else to explain that. And you're trying your best as the main character to get out of there, just to be hunted down in addition to all of the enemies that are in it. I think it's an interesting premise, and I only want to see more of the gameplay. I mean, as cool as the narrative is, as cool as the excuse for shooting things is, the bread and butter here, in my opinion, is going to be that gameplay, especially with it being the developers from Dishonored. The final two games they talked about at the PS5 reveal thing were Demon Souls Remaster, which, bro, come on, that looks insane. It looks so damn good. It looks like Demon Souls, just super pretty, just not PS3 era aesthetics. They look like they're going all out with it completely. The developers handling it, I am more than positive, are the same people who worked on the Shadow of the Colossus port, and with how well of a job they did with that, I mean, I didn't play it myself, just going off entirely of hearsay, but people whose opinions I trust heavily say that port was great. And finally, Resident Evil 8 is, up there. It's out in the open. Village, it's going to be called, or it's going to be Village Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil 8 Village, whatever it's going to be. Your boy called it a couple podcast episodes ago. I went in-depth crazy style with all the accounts of a demo that was floating around. And pretty much everything that I read from those accounts, pretty much everything that I saw was some way in another brought up in the trailer for Resident Evil 8. I'm hella excited for it. They did a bunch of like wacky junk with like werewolves and what seems to be like witches. There's obviously like this village and this mountain snow run downtown. And then they end the trailer with flippin' Chris shooting Mia in the face. Like, what the flip was that? Is that the shocking sequence that involved Chris from the descriptions that I read prior? I know no one's gonna answer my question because, like, I'm here literally sitting alone talking into a microphone, but this is me thinking out loud. Like, I have too many questions. I just want to know and I want to play this game already. But I'll go ahead and stop rambling about the PS5 because, well, it's not here yet. We still don't have a price tag. All we've seen so far is how dope the controller looks and how dope the console itself looks. We've gotten a pretty decent list of games, a pretty decent list of exclusives, and as much hype and excitement as I have for it, I'm just going to be as skeptical as possible. I'm going to keep all my expectations in check, and we'll see what the price tag is like, hopefully pretty soon. And since we're on the topic of games, I think I'm gonna go ahead and end on this. We finally got The Last of Us Part 2. Since the recording of this, not this podcast, but since the recording of the last podcast, we got the announcement that The Last of Us Part 2 was delayed indefinitely, and then leaks happened, which I never saw, I never looked at, and after those leaks, we finally got a release date, which ended up being June 19th. That's like 2 weeks ago now. Maybe a little bit closer to a month now, come to think of it. So the game's been out for a month. I've gotten to play it. I'm already on my second playthrough on the Survivor difficulty. And I can honestly say I have zero idea, other than, prior notions of hate, as to why people are disliking this game so much. So spoilers from The Last of Us from here on out to the end of the podcast. This is your spoiler warning time. Spoiler warning. If you haven't played the game yet, please just click away. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. They fucking killed him, bro. They brutally beat the shit out of Joel, dude. Holy crap. Like, I was in pain watching that hard sequence. It hurt so bad. And I get the backlash from that. But talk about a catalyst to start a revenge story. Talk about making us suffer with these characters and love and cry and make us feel all these damn things just for one of the main ones to get axed almost literally in the most brutal fashion I've seen in video games. And that's just like the beginning too. There's so much nuance to the story and the storytelling, the direction, the gameplay itself. Like, on every cylinder, they were firing so damn hard so that we can get this beautiful fucking masterpiece. Like, needless to say, I loved the game. Needless to say, for me, it's a 10 out of 10. It's super bothersome hearing that people think certain characters are shoehorned in, but they're not even overly done plot points. Even with the backlash of the quote-unquote trans character wasn't even the character that people thought it was. Like, Abby, the woman who kills Joel, who you end up playing in the second half of the game, is just that, a very buff woman. When it comes to Lev, the actual trans character, I understand a little bit of the tenderness and sensitivity that the LGBT community had when it came to the portrayal of that character, because Lev is being hunted out, they're being sought out, and they want to hurt Lev, and I get how that kind of mimics the animosity of some people when it comes toward the LGBT community. So again, I just kind of understand where that sensitivity and tenderness comes from, but having a friend who is trans, she said that she loved it. She felt that it was very important, that the game danced upon it. Yeah, danced around it enough to show what the problems are and not necessarily over-explain everything, which I think that's a sign of good art in general. That's a sign of good storytelling in general, because it should evoke conversation. And with all the hate and backlash that this game is getting, like, people are just proving the themes in the game. People are just proving Neil Druckmann's view on how destructive anger and holding on to that type of hate can be. And this is for anything in general. It doesn't necessarily have to be at gay people or at women or the freaking game itself. Just hate in general, how much it corrodes and hurts and what it could cost you in the end. So, like, in the game, you're controlling Ellie for like half of it, and then at the end again. And this whole time you're trying to find Abby and her crew. There are several assumptions that Ellie has. There are several assumptions that you have to kind of lean on for her to justify what she's doing. Like, she's going into this enemy territory, she's killing all these people to try to find this group of people who only killed one person over in their camp, over in Jackson, which is totally understandable because it's Joel, so you get why Ellie herself is doing it. But during this whole thing, you start to hear the chatter of this other colony, the Wolves, they're called, the WLF, and you start to see that there's more to them. Like, they're people, just like your camp, just like your crew. It humanizes a lot of aspects of gameplay really well. It humanizes the enemies that you're taking down, even so much so as to the world building it does because of the warring factions, or the warring faction being the Scars. So not only do you get like this anger-filled, this rage-induced revenge story on the part of Ellie, you get this thing in the background of like political struggle between these two different groups of people. And it culminates to this midpoint of the game where you think stuff is gonna go down because they already hit you with a shocker by killing your boy, what's his face, I think his name's Jesse? Like that hurt a lot. That killed me. And straight up, I thought Tommy was done for as well, so I was like, dang, dude, how much more of a gut punch can they pull on me right now? How much more can they bash over my head? And then the second part of the game happens, where you pretty much have to play through all the days again as Abby. And this is where like that whole humanizing aspect, like walking a day in somebody else's shoes, you get to see and you get to experience firsthand the atrocities that Ellie is committing on the way over to Abby. But she's also not without her own atrocities. She isn't without her own sins. I mean, we're talking about the woman who kills Joel. But along her story, along her path, her narrative, she meets Lev and Lev's sister. I can't remember her name, spoiler warning. For the spoiler warning, she dies. And that's kind of why I don't remember her as much, but the amount of time you spend with Lev, the bonding, the connection that happens, especially when Abby overcomes her fear of heights to be able to get specific medical supplies in order to save Lev's sister, is one of those defining moments within the gameplay that I felt triumphant. And you wouldn't have been able to do it had you not met this child, had you not met Lev, who is a Scar themselves, or at least they were. See, the reason that they're leaving that faction, the reason they're leaving the religious cult of the Scars, is because Lev is trans, because Lev sees himself as a dude. So that whole scene that they showed us a couple years ago with Abby getting tied up and, hung up by the noose and almost gutted by the Scars, that's also the introduction of Lev and his sister. And it's because of that bond that you create. It's because of meeting this child and having them influence you and your humanity so much that Abby lets go. You go through all this crap. You go through the same amount of days that you do with that you did during Ellie's playthrough, only to find out that your friends are being killed off. You do all this stuff only to go back to your hideout to find the person that you love and the person that they knocked up are dead as hell. You would think that with that amount of anger, you'd think that with that amount of hate, they'd, Abby herself would go back and get even more revenge again. It's like, dang, not only did you kill my dad and now I had to go and kill Joel, but now you killed all my friends and I have to go and kill you. But she doesn't, because of Lev. And that humanity that's influenced should remind you of Joel, should remind you of the narrative of the first game in general. So it's like, Donkey did this perfect diagram thing where Ellie is the whole new stuff, the whole experience of The Last of Us Part 2 and the slyness and the assassin stealth aspect of it. And then you get The Last of Us Part 1 again with Abby and Lev. Despite any lingering feelings I had against Abby, and I still kind of do, because of what happens with Joel, it's really hard to not at least resonate with the character. It's really hard for the character not to resonate with me because I see so many of the flaws that Joel had and that he overcame by meeting Ellie. Which leads me to the very end of the game and what I feel is the most quote-unquote controversial part in the eyes of all of the players. I don't want to say the gaming community, but the hateful players within the gaming community. Is that you go through all this crap, you go through all this stuff, all this laborious, mind-numbing violence, which I didn't even touch upon how brutal the game is. I know I've said it several times, but I cannot stress enough how crunchy and chunky and slicey this game feels, let alone all of the names being called out every time you kill an NPC's friend. Like, the amount of times I've heard Omar eventually made me laugh, but in the beginning I was in genuine shock. I was like, oh my god. But I digress. You go through this whole revenge plot. You leave, oh crap. Okay, so Abby doesn't kill you midpoint of the game, because, like, at the midpoint of the game, you switch over to Abby's character, and it culminates again to where you left off with Ellie, right? And then she doesn't do anything because Lev is there. So however much time passes, about, like, maybe 6 months to a year, it seems like, passes, and you find out Tommy is not only not dead, he's kind of fucked up in the face because he got shot in the face, but he's not dead. He also figures out where Abby might be. And coincidentally, Ellie going to kill Abby ends up saving her. Ends up saving both her and Lev because they get captured by these dudes called the Rattlers. And you don't really know much about them other than they enslave other people to do their bidding. And I assume they're hella brutal with what they do because those people are scared shitless, like the people that they enslave. And we almost see Abby quite literally crucified without, like, the T part. Like, there's this one part where you get to a beach where all these people are, like, tied up and pretty much hung up to dry after what seems to be tortured as well. And you get to the very end of the game with Ellie, you think, okay, she's not going to kill her. Okay, she's not going to do anything. Obviously, she sees the amount of pain and suffering that they've been through. Awesome, she's just gonna let him go. But as soon as Abby puts Lev in a boat to go away, she's like, no, like, we gotta fight this out. Ellie is like, no, we still have to fight this out because she remembers Joel. And she remembers his face and what he looked like as he died, like this bloody pulp, this bloody mess. And it culminates in the most ugly, violent thing that I've experienced in video games. And I thought there was this other part prior with Abby's playthrough at the very end of fighting on the Scar Island that really got, like, it got me to put my, like, finger in my collar and be like, yeesh, golly, gee, like, I shook my hands. I was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, those type feels. But the end of The Last of Us Part 2, that last brutal, last-ditch effort fight between Abby and Ellie is primal, almost. It's disturbing because of how tired both of these women are, how emaciated they are, how already beat up they are, and they still find the energy to punch the crap out of each other, to slice each other. And during the fight, unfortunately, Ellie gets her fingers bit off, and as she's submerging this woman that killed her father figure in the water, as she's going to drown her, she remembers Joel again. And they never outwardly say this, but remembering him and seeing all the pain that he went through and all the good he did for her despite the innumerous imperfections, despite arguably damning all of humanity, it's not like she didn't love him. So I feel like it was that love for Joel, that memory, that want to come to terms with it all, that she lets Abby go and dip off in the boat with Lev. There's a couple powerful shots that happen afterwards, like, and even, like, the last thing that you have control over is being able to do the little guitar minigame, but not having anything sound the same because you're missing two fingers, so it's like you can't even play guitar anymore. And all that extra stuff within, like, the last 20 minutes of the game, I get it, I understand it, but I don't think anything was as powerful as that violent confrontation between both of those women and the eventual letting go of it. Because I think that letting go symbolized how much she wanted to actually forgive Joel, and then not being able to do it, and then thinking that it's this person's fault for her not being able to forgive her father figure, but really it's like all of this hate that they have to deal with that they need to let go. And I don't know. I feel like I can talk about the themes of this game forever. I feel like I'm repeating myself. So I'll just say bravo, Naughty Dog, bravo, Neil Druckmann. All the people who were in this game, all of the voice actors, they flippin' snapped. And that's, like, an entire different thing. Like all of the actors, all the portrayals in this, they had even Jeffrey Wright, the guy from Westworld, like the show that I love, that I adore, my new favorite HBO show aside Game of Thrones. He even, comes up to bat and fucking kills it. Hell, the chick who did Abby did so damn well, like everybody's going after her and is like, yo, I hate you and all this crap, which is terrible, obviously. Like, nobody should get death threats from playing a role in a video game. But I personally thought she did phenomenally, as well as everybody else who came back from the first game. But yeah, I've been talking about this for way too long, so let's go ahead and wind down on episode 6. I don't think I've sane? I can't even say words. I haven't said the name of this episode, the number of this episode, so here we are, pretty much an hour in, episode 6, just so y'all know. I don't really have much else to talk about other than like stuff that I watched, like that Good Boys movie, which is flippin' awful. Started watching Dorohedoro, which is like this sick anime. I actually finished the first season, and I'm gonna start picking up that manga. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and wait to talk about those until next week. I'll leave you with a personal anecdote, just to end the podcast. All right, so the other day, I was, minding my own business, asleep, with my AC off, I should say, and I guess this is why, this little happening happened. But, it's been, like, super hot, here in the United States, like, all over the country, and I assume, on this side of the world in general. But yeah, it's been super hot, and I've been turning off my AC at night so that I can conserve power, along with, like, my PC. Just because it's like a nervous tick type deal. It's like I need to save, conserve, do as much as I can. But because I have a wall AC unit, like one of those, not wall, but window AC units, I kind of have like an open window, and I do my best to like cover stuff around it, for sound in general, actually, when it comes to streaming. But also for this podcast, I do my best to minimalize the amount of echo and outside noise. But it didn't prevent this couple from arguing right outside my window, and it didn't prevent me not hearing it. So like I said, I was minding my own business, asleep in my boxers and stuff, and I wake up like hella angry because all I hear is yelling in Spanish too, mind you. Like, this is really fast, really focused diatribe in Spanish. Like, I woke up and I genuinely thought it was for me. Like, I thought I was having a flashback to when I was like a little kid and dropped like this one vase that was hella flipping expensive, and I was like, oh my god, am I having this dream? Is this happening? Is this a memory? But no, it was this couple outside, and I let it go for a little bit. I was like, oh man, that kind of sucks, so that's annoying. And I tried to fall back asleep, and that didn't happen because I was already getting all sweaty from, like, the night before not having my AC on. So I'm uncomfortable, to say the very least. After a few minutes of, like, this ridiculous back and forth from this poor guy and this very angry woman, I think, this isn't cool. It's early as fuck. I should probably go say something. Now, I was in the cloudy, fog-minded aspect of my waking. I was still during the quote-unquote waking up phase of me waking up. So think about how crazy I looked going out at about like 6:30 a.m.-ish, wild as fuck hair, a shirt, sleeveless shirt, and shorts, and going out barefoot. Now, I'm not a big dude by any means or anything, so I don't think I looked intimidating whatsoever. My point is, like, I think I just looked disheveled and crazy and, like, yo, what the fuck? Like, literally just stumbled out of bed, right? But I was very upset that these people decided to argue outside of my window of all places, because there is another building next door, and you have to walk between this, like, little walkway to even be loud enough for me to hear you. So I go outside, barefoot, disheveled, and I walk out there, and I make direct eye contact with both of them instantly. I assume that they were, like, jogging together or something, or they were exercising or something along those lines, because they both had, like, workout gear on, and you could tell that whatever they were arguing about, they were already arguing about on the way to them stopping in front of my building to argue. So this all happens in Spanish, mind you. I like go up and I lift my hand, like kind of like if I'm like Hulk Hogan, you know, calling somebody out for a cage match. I'm like, I'm challenging you to an argument. Well, anyway, I go up and I like point at both of them. I was like, do you have any idea what time it is? I'm like, do you understand that people live right there and that I could hear everything you're saying? And they both just kind of look at me, this disheveled haired, ridiculous looking dude. And the guy goes, oh, wait, did we wake you up? And I was like, yeah, dude, you woke me up and guaranteed you woke up everybody else in my apartment as well. And as soon as I said that, the lady just looked completely mortified. Like she looked at her husband and her husband looked at her. And he just asked me again. He's like, wait, for real, we just woke you up? And I was like, yeah, dude, I wouldn't have been out here. I wouldn't have come outside if you guys were a little bit softer with your arguments. Or I didn't say that exactly, but you pretty much along those lines. I was like, yo, if you weren't as loud as you guys were, I wouldn't have known, and you guys could have been on your merry way. But you just woke me up, and it's my day off, which all of my days are days off currently because unfortunately I'm not working, but they don't need to know that. And I was already fucking pissed, you know what I mean? I'm like waking up from a sweaty slumber. Nobody wants to hear, you know, yelling, let alone in your native language, let alone setting off a possible flashback from when you broke a fancy ass vase when you were like 8. But again, they didn't need to know any of that. So I just, you know, confirmed again. I just repeated again, like, yeah, you guys just woke me up. You guys maybe want to calm down? Can you guys calm down? And they both looked at each other and they were like, yeah, we're sorry. And I go back up the stairs and I like, you know, turn on my AC and I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I'm up for the day now. Might as well work out and all this stuff. But even after all that, you can still kind of hear them arguing as they were like walking away type deal. It was funny as hell because the lady was like, ya ves, which is like, you see? It's like, you see what happens when you get me going, like, and like you set me off, like, you know, we wake other people up. And that made me laugh super damn hard because like, even after all that, she's still blaming the dude for everything. And I'm the type of guy who's like, you know what, fuck it, yeah, I'm wrong, let's just move past this. And this guy was not. He was most definitely not that type of dude. They continued to argue as I heard them, you know, dwindle off in the distance. But yeah, that's my little anecdote. That's my little happening that happened this week to end the podcast. I thought that was funny and I wanted to share it with y'all. This has been episode 6 of the Punched Podcast. I will be here again in 2 weeks. So every other Monday we'll be releasing an episode because it's easier for me to release that way and it gives me a chance to build up stuff to talk about. So thanks again. You can follow me over on twitch.tv/Pika_punch. You could also follow me at Podcast Punched over on Twitter. And you can just follow me at Pika_punch also on Twitter. Thanks again for listening all the way to the end. Thanks for listening to me ramble, talk a lot about nothing. And I'll see you in the next one.